House Minority Leader Mitch McConnell on Monday blasted Georgia GOP Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's embrace of, quote, loony lies and conspiracy theories as a, quote, cancer for the Republican Party.
That's Mitch McConnell talking about the cancer. He's trying to cut out the Republican Party. Well, there's another cancer that's trying to be cut out by folks out in Wyoming, and that would be, yes, Liz Cheney. There's going to be a vote or at least a meeting tomorrow to discuss her role in leadership. But the good folks out in Wyoming are this Saturday going to hold her account for the people that drove this impeachment, this travesty against the 45th president of the United States that ended President Trump's first term in office. I want to bring in now Joey Correnti, the fourth from live from Wyoming. Joey, talk to us about what you guys are doing in your county, what you've passed, what other counties are doing, and then what is going to happen, this very important meeting that's going to happen on Saturday.
Okay, good morning. Thanks for having me on again, Steve. What we did here in Carbon County a few weeks ago was we passed a resolution of censure based on the actions of our state representative in the U.S. House in her early media attention grab to tell the world how she was going to vote against Donald Trump and vote for his impeachment without any evidence. So we had a few town halls, public meetings, and then we had our formal meeting, passed that resolution of censure, and since then, nearly half the counties in Wyoming have picked up and ran with it, expanded some of the language, not only calling for her to be censured, but asking her to step down, refusing her future support in her campaigns financially and through endorsements, calling on House members to remove her from leadership. So it's really kind of amplified through the voice of the people, the true voice of the people. And there's plenty of counties throughout the nation that have picked it up. 2 counties down in Kentucky have censured Mitch McConnell. The entire state of Oregon GOP have sent letters of reprimand to their House delegation. And what it really is us letting our representation know on this issue, we disagree with you completely, and it is a much more weighted and important issue to us. And the interesting thing here in Wyoming is it actually has not failed in any county it's been allowed to be presented in. So we have a few counties that pulled some procedural issues to stop it from being presented, because I'm pretty sure if the people had the chance to vote on it, they would vote to support it. But other than those few counties, every county that's had a chance to hear it on the floor has passed it by a large margin.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. When you say
what we're going to do is we're
it's been procedural where they haven't done it. Clearly, the establishment or the Cheney advocates, but where it has come up, at least where I've seen it, it's almost been unanimous or like 23-1. It's been overwhelming support. You've actually had votes at the county level. It's been overwhelming support to censure, and in some cases to censure and to demand that she resign immediately as the one member from Wyoming that's in the House. Is that not correct?
That is absolutely correct. We will look at on Saturday at the statewide meeting, when every county's representative delegation will have a chance to hear it, all of the additional language that other counties have added, which include all the things you stated. And I believe the county that had the largest margin of votes against was a county that had 27 votes for the resolution, 9 votes against. Every other county has either been unanimous or passed by a margin of 3 votes against, and the rest of the body being fully in support of it and adding their own language. So it's not just people replicating what they think is a good idea. They are involved, they're engaged, they're adding their voice to the business that's going to be presented to the state on Saturday.
Okay, I just want to make sure we go through something. And I've asked other county chairmen and other spokesmen that come on here from the good folks out in Wyoming, and you've got one of the best Republican parties in the country because you do try to accommodate both establishment and grassroots and the populist and the Trump movement out there. Joey, when and I've asked everybody this question, and I think this is what's kind of been mind-boggling to the massive audience that comes on this show, which they really can't understand. Did she at any time reach out to anybody you know in Wyoming, in the political circles, and actually discuss her logic for what she was going to do, and particularly being such a driving force on this impeachment and being, quite frankly, so nasty about it? Did she run that by anybody?
Not before the decision was made for her to make the vote. I know no one in the party was contacted. She has her staff, and some of them are involved in the party. So I can't say they didn't talk or haven't talked. But the thing that is really starting to bother people now is when she made her statement, when Representative Cheney made her statement of why she was going to impeach, she made it sound as if she might know something that the rest of the general population doesn't know. She said, we have enough evidence now. And nobody's seen that evidence in 3 weeks. Also, nobody's heard from her on this issue since it's happened.
Well, that's the other point. That's the other point I want to get to. So there was no contact, maybe some staff, although we haven't heard that, maybe. But after she's had this controversial vote and become a lightning rod and clearly see the firestorm that's come out of Wyoming that you so rightly said has, and we had the GOP chairman on, I think a couple of Saturdays ago, started this, it caught fire around the country. Arizona then censured Ducey. Certain counties in Kentucky censured McConnell. Oregon did all 10. And it was they were inspired, quite frankly, by what you guys are doing. Has she made any contact that you know of to people in Wyoming to try to the common courtesy of explaining what her logic was, and then those statements that led people to believe that she knew more than was actually generally out there?
I haven't heard anything, and I would think as the representative of the county that brought the very first action against any member of the U.S. House of Representatives for this vote, I may have gotten at least a courtesy email from a staff member, but I've heard absolutely nothing, nor have I gotten, one state that I know of has gotten a confirmation that she will appear at this meeting on Saturday. Well, that's which is called for in the resolution.
That's why I want to get into that. By the way, there's two things. She has her House staff. They also have a group out there called Team Cheney. Has anybody at Team Cheney contacted you or contacted anybody that you know of that's in leadership or even not? Is anybody? So let's leave her House side aside. Has anybody in Team Cheney, which is this operation set up to promote her political fortunes and to be at least some sort of looks like connective tissue, has anybody in Team Cheney contacted anybody?
I've heard people on local radio stations who are working with Team Cheney in some capacity, a communications director or advocates of Representative Cheney, who've spoken their mind, but I haven't heard anybody make a statement that's been directly from Team Cheney or Representative Cheney herself. There's some support. There is support in the state for Representative Cheney.
Yep.
And I think that's good. I think we need to hear both sides.
Yep.
But we're really not hearing the other side.
Yep.
Anybody I've heard from has only spoken their own opinion in support of, not make a statement on behalf of Representative Cheney.
So what's going to happen on Saturday? Talk to us about this meeting, and is it open to the public? Can people, concerned citizens, show up and just be part of this, or at least watch and listen in?
Yeah, on Saturday morning in Rawlins, Wyoming, we're going to meet and conduct our regular business. It's going to be a little boring for a while. It's just housekeeping stuff and what we normally go through. But as we get towards the new business, that's when resolutions and action items of the body start to get worked on the floor. And that's probably what people are interested in seeing. Yes, every meeting of the Wyoming Republican Party and all of its county parties are open to the public. So we can't, nor do we intend to, stop anybody from coming or being in the room. There may be capacity issues at some point. I don't know, but we intend to do our business, and we do our business transparently. So we have no issue with the public being there to at least observe these proceedings and how this resolution is amended and adopted or possibly voted down. I don't see that happening, but being a realist, there's always the possibility.
Has Liz Cheney contacted anybody? Is she going to be there in person? I mean, your whole movement is to have her come and address this and give her side of the argument. You're not condemning her. You're saying, come, we're going to censure you. You've got to come and respond. You need to talk to us. Has she or office responded? Is she going to be there? Is she going to give the common courtesy of to the folks in Wyoming? Is she going to come out and address the charges against her?
I haven't heard. In the resolution that was issued by my county, there's 2 action items in there. One was a censure from the county, and that's just a statement of disagreement. It's not condemnation. It's not calling her a bad person. Other counties have added other language, but the second action item was the request that she appear and explain her actions, not get browbeat, not get put down, but offering her that courtesy of your constituents want to hear from you, and we're calling for you to appear. So not only we haven't gotten a response, but we do have a portion of our schedule for the Saturday meeting to accommodate her if she chooses to show up. But again, we haven't heard back. So I believe that all of the courtesy and preparation for doing the right thing has happened on the end of the Republican Party and the voices of the people that say, hey, we're going to give you an opportunity, but we don't even get the courtesy of being told, no, we're not going to do that.
Just as a program note, that the charges have just been filed, I think, at 10 o'clock, the prosecution's overall strategy of the Democrats. We're going to have Boris at the bottom of the hour have gone through it and go through it, but I think you're going to see it's a pretty comprehensive. They're coming in hard and hot on President Trump, and this is not going to be pleasant. Okay, it's not going to be pleasant, and this is why we're arguing. You saw I thought the fiasco on Hannity last night. We're going to have more about that. This esoteric arguing about due process. Obviously, it's unconstitutional. Obviously, there is no due process. These are obvious things. They should be argued, but that's just one small part. We're going to get to this. Joey, thank you very much. Joey Correnti IV from out in Wyoming. Raheem, you have a question for Joey? Or
no, just
a jump. Joey, thank you so much. We're going to be following this. We'll hopefully have some coverage on it on Saturday on Real America's Voice, because this is a very important, the censure of Liz Cheney out in Wyoming. Joey, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on again.
We go from the geopolitics of the South China Sea around Burma, which we'll get to later in the show, to vaccinations and the pandemic, to really where the rubber meets the road. And this is a populist movement. What is most powerful, the reason the show is metastasizing, is because we try to connect dots. And out there in Wyoming, this is a revolt. It's a revolt of the peasants, as you would say, right? The little guy has just had a belly full of it. Tomorrow, McCarthy's got the opportunity to really make a bold statement of how he's going to clean a house here and get people focused. If he's serious about, if he's serious about 2022, he's got to start with removing Liz Cheney and taking there's already 107 to 120 votes on this. It's got to be 2/3, I think. Raheem, your comments, and of course, McConnell, he praises Liz Cheney and condemns Congressman Green.
I have in front of me an email that somebody sent me from Verizon PAC. And Verizon PAC wants to invite people to a virtual event in honor of Congresswoman Liz Cheney to take place on Tuesday, February the 23rd, 2021. The link will be provided upon your RSVP, which will cost you $2,500 to be named as a host and $1,000 to attend. These are who's raising money here in D.C. for Liz Cheney.
She's in Gucci Gulch, which is a K Street, where all the lobbyists are. She's a player. There they love her. In Wyoming, not so much. Calling for her censure and, in many cases, her resignation. This is going to build to a head, and I got to tell you, if she's not removed, they don't let this vote go forward to remove her from leadership, it's only going to pick up momentum. You have to clean up your house first before you can move forward. This is why we're not going to let go of November 3rd. Raheem, Steve will turn in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
But thank you for being with us. I see these three things. I see Constitution, and with that, whether or not you have jurisdiction. I see that if they're going to say that was incitement, I don't know how one peacefully, patriotically marches to the Capitol to do that. And we now know from law enforcement, even from news outlets, and even from court documents, that this was all pre-planned ahead of time, hardly an incitement.
Yeah. Listen, you've hit many of the main arguments that I think are attractive to the American people. They're all right on. But I'm going to say to you that besides the fact that this process is completely unconstitutional and that this is a very, very dangerous road to take with respect to the First Amendment, putting at risk any passionate political speaker, which is really against everything we believe in this country, foundation of the First Amendment. But I'm going to tell you, I think it's also the most ill-advised legislative action that I've seen in my lifetime. It is tearing the country apart at a time when we don't need anything like that. I think President Biden missed a great opportunity to be a statesman and to have demanded that this thing be called off, frankly. This is the political weaponization of the impeachment process. There was a rush to judgment. Listen, when President Trump became president, the day he was elected, there were calls for his impeachment already. This is the weapon they've tried to use against him. But now we know also that the agenda, Ms. Pelosi and others, is simply to bar President Trump from ever running for president again. And that's about as you can get.
Okay,
Can you
take that down. That was the last time I had. I've heard enough of that, okay? I've heard enough of that. That's all kind of accurate, but it's not really. There's the concept in decision-making or how you drive decisions called missing the mark. That misses the mark. And here you have to hit the mark. That's victimization. It's one. Yes, those arguments are correct. No doubt, they're correct, and they should be made. It's also, they just did the filing. They just did the filing. What have we said on here from Raskin and this crowd? They've just done the filing. We're going to get Boris on here to go through it. But the headline is House impeachment brief argues Trump unmistakably responsible for the Capitol attack. Now, they're not arguing the law here. This is not really a legal brief. As we said, it was not going to be a legal brief. Jamie Raskin and these guys have made an emotional brief. They know they don't have the votes to convict, okay? They don't have the votes to convict. And what they're going to do is try to emotionally convict President Trump in front of the eyes of the American people, to therefore purge him from the political process, because they're not going to be able to legally do it. And how are they going to do that? They're going to emotionally tie together his language over a long period of time. They're going to talk about the rally, but they know they don't have it there, and we understand they don't have it there. But, and this is go back to the New York Times, page one story from yesterday, right? I think I still have it here. Yep, I'll dig it up in a second. The 77 days, the 77 days story. And that 77 days story is that everything he did from the 4th of November forward. And they're going to put this into a witch's brew, into a stew that shows that President Trump is the only president in American history that are up on the charges of violently or inciting a violent insurrection against the American Republic. That's what they're doing. And Sean's comments last night miss the mark. They're all accurate. I agree with you. I believe in them, but it's not really relevant. That's a technical argument that should be made and has to be made, but it's only one element, and I would say only one small element. There's not going to be, what, you're going to debate, you can't do this? They're doing it, okay? And they're going to get 3 or 4 days to lay it out in all its living color and have all the video and all be cut. As Raheem knows, you can cut video anyway, all to be cut to bring up emotional charge that this guy is violent and his people are violent and they're domestic terrorists and they're insurrectionists. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. And that's going to be indelibly implanted on an audience that's going to be 1 billion people throughout the world. And they're going to take those videos and boom, and the arguments that the managers. Remember Schiff for hours and hours and days with nothing, with a phone call and some interagency process with nothing, over and over and over. Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. So it's indelibly linked so that every school child knows that he was impeached for a second time and the charges were brought up and it was inciting violent insurrection and that his supporters were insurrectionists and they're dangerous and these are dangerous people and he talks in coded language. We have to understand something, and I think Fox News should understand something. The opposition here are very smart and cunning people. And the American people, and particularly the deplorables, are very smart people. It can't be spun anymore. And if this is the lawyer that's going to get up there, and if those are the arguments, President Trump's not going to be convicted. Not going to be convicted. I don't know. They got 4 or 5 votes. The haters, the Romneys and the Sasses and things like that. But that's not the point. The point is not they're going to point and go, hey, it was 55-45. It was bipartisan. It's the most bipartisan impeachment vote. We couldn't get to the 67 because that's some unreachable numbers that the framers set up, right? But he was convicted by a majority, 55-45. You had 5 Republicans that heard it of inciting violent insurrection against the country for the first time in history. And his defense after this coordinated emotional beatdown, and I'm not saying they have any standing in law whatsoever. But remember, this is not a court of law. It's not. The Senate makes up their rules here of evidence and what can be brought up, right? This is a political process. And you have one side that's being very smart on the politics of where they see it and where they want to drive it, and the other side, and here's why. Because he's been told, if you mention election fraud, if you mention that word, at any time if you mention that word, if that crosses your lips or crosses the lips of your attorneys, you will be convicted. Do you think Mitch McConnell, do you think let's go back to the overall thing. Take the 20, you think there's 17, 18 senators that are going to stand, besides the 5 haters, another 12, 13 that'll convict him? Because they have to have more than just a 2/3 so nobody gets blamed for it. I don't think so. Why do you think we're focused on Liz Cheney so much? Because you show what Liz Cheney, that you can't run and hide from this, okay? People are going to hold people accountable. And now we're in a terrible situation. And the people that have led the president on in this, and he got rid of the team the other day because he's sitting there going, hey, I hear what you're saying on this. I got it. It's no due process. It's everything like that. But at what time do we pivot and talk about Wisconsin? Where do we talk about Georgia? Oh, we're not doing that. We weren't. Lindsey Graham said we can't do that. That word, election, if we do that, you're convicted. We're not doing that. And he sat there and go, well, what? Hang on for a second. You got the opening thing. It'll take a couple hours, but where's the beef? And then they were gone. And then this guy shows up last night with the beard, right? Hey, I don't look right with a beard either, but man, the beard's got to come off. You can't go in there like the absent-minded professor. You got to bring the heat. The Democrats are bringing heat. They're coming in hot on this thing. And I've heard people say already, look and say, well, it's not legally tight. It doesn't have to be legally tight. This is not a legal process. They know they don't have the votes. They're there to do the emotional thing they do, and MSNBC and CNN, and it's going to be over and over and over and over again. And you go to your country club, you go to your PTA meeting, you go out to play tennis with somebody or to pick up the kids or go to soccer, and they're going to be sitting there going, you're one of those Trump people, right? You backed. I saw it. It was in the Senate. It was in the Senate. Over and over and over and over again. I saw it. I saw Raskin. I saw all these people, and they were down there, and they had videos. They had it all. And you guys had every chance to defend it. And what you talked about due process, you talked about the constitutionality, you talked about, Belknap and 1876 and all this, and I heard it, but you never came back and said, because remember, the linchpin, that's what but you think it's rent. Listen, no conspiracies, but no coincidences. Do you think the 5 Pulitzer Prize winners and the 7 people dropped that story on page 1 that's 10,000 words in the New York Times, 6 pages, that it just happened to randomly drop yesterday, the day before the briefings were filed? No, that's not true. It dropped for a reason. And the 77 days is a part of this. So you're going to go to your soccer thing with your kids and they go, hey, that guy wore a MAGA hat one time. He's one of these MAGA guys. Where you never defended it. You argued the Constitution, due process, and everything like that, and they had counter arguments to that. There's disagreement. Why don't you guys go to the Supreme Court? Why don't you talk about that? This is not a legal process. This is an emotional process. This is about emotion, and they're gonna ramp it up hard. Raheem.
Politico has the story.
Am I off here?
No, you're very on.
Thanks. I just want to make sure I'm staying.
You're very on. And Politico has now some of the detail that's going to come out in the claims made by the Democrats.
The filing was just done at 10 o'clock when we came on the air.
Filing's just done. I've just gone through it. At least, what's public about it right now. And there's plenty to go through in here. And actually, if I was President Trump's lawyer, I'd feel very good about this. Very good about the potential to go in there and talk about the election fraud here.
This is my point. We're going to get Boris. Boris has gone through this quickly. We have Boris. We got Matt Braynard, the guy that did all the analytics of it. We're going to get into all this when we return in a moment on War Room Pandemic.
It's all started, everything's begun, and you are over, 'cause we're taking down the CCP, spread the word all through Hong Kong, we will fight till they're all gone, we rejoice when there's no more, let's take down the CCP, they have all opportunity.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
So we've got to have a massive legal operation. I know the Biden campaign is working on that. We have to have poll workers, and I urge people who are able to be a poll worker. We have to have our own teams of people to counter the force of intimidation that the Republicans and Trump are going to put outside polling places. This is a big organizational challenge, but at least we know more about what they're going to do. And, Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances, because I think this is going to drag out. And eventually, I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch.
Okay, I just want to say from the live chat, somebody said, Bannon's missing the mark too because not taught that corruption. That's ridiculous. Of course this is about that. But it's not the corruption. They're hiding it up, but they're on. This is now. Not some theoretical, the swamp. And stop using the word the swamp. It's too cute. This is the corruption of the permanent political class in this country. That's obviously what it's about. To hide all their corruption and crimes. No doubt about that. But we're talking about the thing itself. That is what is before us. We have decisions to make. We don't have some time for some theoretical argument about corruption. Clearly it's about that. Get focus in the chat room. I need focus now. Raheem.
So the reason I wanted to expose people to Hillary Clinton once again, and you can blame me for that later.
No, it's great. I wanted her voice. I got to have her voice.
Not just that. Not just the voice. For the podcast audience, you've got to go back and watch this clip. It's the voice. She says do not concede under any circumstances. But then her interviewer, who I think used to work for her at some point, right? Her interviewer goes like this, puts the arms up, and goes, yeah, arms up, yeah. And you can see that in the clip, right? So you're being cheered on to say do not concede under any circumstances.
Under any circumstances.
The reason it's important is the last line of this Politico thing.
Yep.
And we're doing this in real time, ladies and gentlemen. The last line is, quote, from the brief, quote, "No president has ever refused to accept an election result or defied the lawful processes for resolving election disputes until President Trump," end quote.
Yep.
And the chutzpah of Hillary Clinton saying, do not concede under any circumstances, the left media going, 100%. And then this works itself into the brief.
77 days, front page of the New York Times yesterday. This is the predicate for this filing. Okay, this is the predicate for the filing. In fact, this is actually better written than the filing. I want to bring in now Boris. Boris, I understand it's a weak legal argument, but it's not the point. The point is not the legality of this. Clearly, it's unconstitutional, and they're going to make those arguments. Tell me about how we're asking these guys, the vertical, how they concentrating on, they're trying to destroy Donald J. Trump. How are they going to try to do it?
Steve, great to be with you. Good morning, Raheem. Good to be with you. All the patriots at MAGA Brain Trust. Here's what I thought as soon as I was reading this. It's Groundhog Day, and it felt like I've read all this before, I've heard all this before, and it was the MSNBC special where I was the only person defending the president now a week and a half ago. This is what it is.
100%.
There's no facts in there. It is all emotion, and but it is overwhelming. They're coming with their full battery at President Trump, and they're throwing anything and everything at him. They're calling any claim of election fraud, voter fraud, the quote-unquote big lie, capitalized. And it is shocking to me that Jamie Raskin, who's Jewish, will use a term that was coined by Adolf Hitler and the despicable, murderous Nazis. The big lie is what Hitler accused the Jews of doing and perpetrating during World War I and about World War I. And now you've got the Democrats claiming that the Republicans, the MAGA movement, President Trump are guilty of the big lie. This is a coordinated effort to discredit and destroy President Trump in the public eye. Yes, they address the constitutionality and say that there's history for this. Our side says that there is no practice or precedent for impeaching and then having a trial of a former president. And there will be that argument. There should have been that argument in the Supreme Court as soon as the charges were filed with the Senate and the trial was scheduled. That was last week. But in terms of the meat of this, what the Democrats are saying, and they know they cannot get a conviction, which actually frees them up because now they can say whatever they want. They are absolutely demonizing President Trump in this filing. President Trump's filing comes at noon. But this filing that we saw that has been now covered by Politico, the New York Times, and I've read the actual filing is full of emotion, it's full of anger, and it is the resistance piece de resistance, actually. It's really the resistance final document, final indictment of President Trump, and they're throwing everything at him.
Breaking news on Burma. They're going to make an official announcement. The Biden administration has been totally locked up on this. We're going to get into Burma in the next hour after this announcement.
By the way, I resent Boris. You got Groundhog Day. How did I not get the Groundhog Day thing? That was such a great.
That's
call.
what Boris. That's what Boris is the best. But that's why he was head of surrogates. That's why he's head of surrogates. Boris. We've talked.
That Bill de Blasio killed the groundhog this morning in New York.
I saw that.
Bill de Blasio tried to do a copycat Groundhog Day. Dropped the groundhog. It's dead, just like his political career.
We have said this now for weeks and weeks and weeks. I pray that the 45th President of the United States reads this in excruciating detail this morning and ask his attorneys before they file, hey, can we put a couple lines in there? I just want to put a line down. I know you've already drafted. I just want to put a line. And we will go through state by state on the election, voter, and ballot fraud. That's for the President of the United States. In fact, he ought to just handwrite it in and say, this will be presented. The guy said, well, we don't really know this. We don't understand it. Don't worry. He should just say, I got this. More than ever, we need Donald J. Trump to return to the Capitol, to return to the well of the Senate, not as a witness, but as an advocate of his position. And I think we've said this now for weeks, okay? This is not brain surgery. This is not like the pandemic and the Wuhan lab and the complicated stuff like that. You knew this was coming. Why did we say it was 10 days ago, when Ari Melber, who I think is the best guy at NBC, he had that 1 hour special that night, and Boris was going to be the cleanup batter. He was coming in late in like the D block, and that I texted Bruce. I said, man, this thing is brutal. They are coming in. They're basically accusing Trump to be an accessory to murder, is how they're presenting this. It's so over the top, and it was codified. We knew this was coming. Raskin and these guys said this the entire time. They haven't by the way, they haven't mislabeled or they're coming in with no real, not facts, but they're going to cut the videos. They're going to have this set up in a concentrated, coherent argument to smear President Trump in perpetuity. And by smearing Trump, smear you. So the next time you wear a MAGA ball cap to the kids' soccer game on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, people are going to be looking down, giving you stink eye because of how they smeared the president. And it's actually, Boris, challenging because they do take the whole thing of not conceding. They take that as a central piece, not the speeches at the ellipse and that day, because they know they can't prove that, because even Handy said last night it was pre-planned, as Rudy's been saying. They take the key was the first president never to concede, right? After Hillary Clinton said, we'll never concede. They took from November 4th all the way up to the 6th, the 77 days to the day. That's the argument, right? There's only one counter to this. President Trump's got to show the receipts. If you don't show the receipts, then they challenged you They called you a liar. Everybody associated is a liar because this is the big lie, using, as Boris points out, Hitler's terminology. So, Boris, what is going to happen at noon when, and if the guy last night's the guy, hey, so be it. It is what it is. But what do you think is going to happen at noon today?
Well, to your point, Steve, what's crazy about the Democrats' claim is that it's absolutely historically false. They only have to go back to Al Gore in terms of not accepting results of an election. Then you can go to 1876 and the Hayes-Tilden election. Then you can go to, obviously, Andrew Jackson. There's just the amount of lying in this filing is overwhelming, but it doesn't matter. Go back to that MSNBC special. They cut and spliced a video, 3 comments from 3 different speeches of President Trump, and they try to present it as it was one speech. The Democrats, the gloves are off. They're coming for us. We're in the 10th round here, and we've got to be knuckling up. And I hope that's what we see at noon. What I saw yesterday on Hannity's show is somebody who wants to argue about the constitutionality, but no, let's not talk about the election. Let's not talk about the voter fraud in Wisconsin and Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico. I don't think that's how we fight back. In the history of the world, appeasement has never worked. Let me say that again. In the history of the world, appeasement has never worked. So why are we trying to appease the Democrats as they're coming at us with everything?
I mean, it's worked for the tyrants. That's what appeasement works for. Boris, I agree. I want to get into some of the detail here of what we're reading from Politico as well. They open up saying there is unmistakable responsibility on behalf of the president. They want him barred from federal public office. They say he pursued power at all costs. They said he used incendiary and violent language. And they say since the dawn of the republic, nobody has had the temerity to challenge election results like this. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. We went through this, last month? The Democrats have challenged every single Republican certification of votes in the last, Boris, 30 years? And it's happened before that, too. It happened in the last century. It happened in the one before that. This is actually quite a regular thing to happen in the Senate chamber, to have the challenge of election results. And that's why I say that I think President Trump can feel quite good about this, if his lawyers get it right.
Boris, one question, a technical question. If they file today and they make the arguments they made on Hannity last night of the unconstitutionality, the no due process, these technical arguments, powerful but technical, and the president, do they have the ability in the pretrial briefings next Tuesday, a week from now, to basically add the election fraud, to actually say, upon further review, and seeing what you guys filed this morning, we're going to broaden the scope of our defense. They have the opportunity in the pretrial, the next phase of this, they got to file today at noon, respond to this. The same process will take place next week. They'll file first the prosecution, or the managers will file the prosecution, and then it'll be followed by the pretrial brief of President Trump. Will be much more detailed. Actually, things will lay out who we're going to call, how we're going to do this. Does the president have the ability, if his lawyers today and they just filed this kind of narrow, the skinny deal, do they have the ability to broaden it out next week?
They do. What's happening today is not the answer. There wouldn't be an answer just 2 hours after the filing by the Democrats. The answer is going to be next week. So since the Democrat, and think about this in terms of a regular jury trial, criminal trial, you've got the brief, then you've got an answer. You've got a defense, you've got an answer. So here you've got the prosecution's brief, and now you're going to have the defense brief coming at noon. The answer from the defense is not due until next week. So absolutely, the president and his lawyers will be able to answer everything that the Democrats have put out there. So take the big lie, and then let's go and controvert that. Let's go and respond to it. Let's go through the states. Take the fact that they're claiming he incited. Let's look at the evidence about the timing, and Raheem's been great on this, Jack Posobiec and others as well. Bernie Kerrick's come up with a lot of information. Let's look at the timing on what actually happened on January 6th. So I firmly believe, and I've said this to you repeatedly, Steve, on this show, that there have to be 3 vectors to this defense.
So, Boris, hang on one second. Hang on. I got to bring you over the break. We got Matt Braynard, also the expert in data and the guy that spent weeks and weeks and weeks looking at this. We got Matt Braynard. He's also got this really original idea about some of the people that are still held. Braynard, Boris, next, short commercial break. We're going to continue this hot off the press. The charges of the case against the president is now out in full glory for everybody to see. You would have seen it if you'd been watching the War Room 10 days ago. Okay, back in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, Boris Ephshteyn, you got an hour and 10 minutes to President Trump files his response to this. What's your recommendation of the President of the United States? The 45th President of the United States had just finished his first term.
The 45th president who just finished his first term, the greatest term in American presidential history. My recommendation is this: go on three fronts, fight on three fronts. One, that this trial is unconstitutional. Two, that there was absolutely no incitement. The president said march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol. And we even know from this filing from the Democrats, they don't believe there was direct incitement. That's why they're going backward and they're talking about everything from November 4th through January 6th. And three, you have to fight back. You have to dispute this notion of the big lie. The American people, the MAGA movement, which is the lifeblood of the Republican Party, and as Raheem said yesterday, America demands that we fight back this notion that there was no election fraud. 81% of Republicans, over 50% of Americans believe that this election was somehow stolen. They believe there was election fraud, there was voter fraud. We have to continue bringing the receipts. We have to push back on the Democrats. And if we do not, President Trump and the MAGA movement will be bowled over by these emboldened, radical, cynical, angry members of the resistance, because this is all it is. This is the resistance finally getting their full battle gear on and coming at us.
That was a
They
Braynard.
view this as their big battle, trying to put President Trump away. We cannot let that happen.
This is the key point. They think this is where they purge him from the system. Okay, by the way, I only question two things. Number one, I think Lincoln is probably got the better first term. As great as President Trump was, I'll have to take Lincoln in that. Number two, I think it's closer to 40%, not 50%.
Lincoln didn't move the embassy in Israel.
Boris, thank you very much. How did you get this? What are your coordinates on social media?
But what was your number two? Lincoln was number one. What was your number two? I didn't hear you.
It's either FDR's first or Trump's FDR, Reagan. Those three all tied.
That's your favorite president?
Maybe I'll throw Jackson in there too.
Jackson number one.
Okay, what is it, Boris?
I'm going to stick with Trump.
Okay.
At Boris EP on Twitter, Boris_Epshteyn on the gram, Boris_EPSHTEY on Instagram, at Boris EP on Twitter. Have a great Groundhog Day. Hope to see you at 5 o'clock. God bless. Stay strong.
Okay, great. By the way, we're going to have a market update at the end of the show too, so I want to get into that. Market's very choppy today. The Reddit rebels taking it on the chin as markets go up and down, right? It got a little frothy the other day. Okay, we want to turn now to Matt Braynard. Matt was the head of digital for us in data in 16. Also did a yeoman's work going around the country looking at these places like Wisconsin and other places for election fraud, voter fraud, etc. Matt, I just got to ask you, because you're one of the technical guys, right? Is there any doubt in your mind that if called upon to support a legal effort of President Trump and his lawyers, even at this late stage, to 10 days from now be able to go in and start to argue Wisconsin, argue Georgia, argue Arizona, not on voter machines or nothing esoteric, but just the nuts and bolts as your team pulled it together? Do you have a question that you could not support a very aggressive argument about the voter fraud?
I don't issue with you calling it too late. Remember that in 2000 we had 3 media organizations spending millions of dollars to conclude 7 months later that after a manual recount, George W. Bush did in fact win Florida. So I don't think we can call it too late. Maybe too late to actually change who's the White House occupant. But what I'm finding and continuing to find, because we're actually still doing research, is, and we're looking forward to presenting it more aggressively without the constraints of the lawsuits we were entangled with initially, is that among those 3 states, the number of illegal ballots surpassed the margin of victory. Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona Without those three, Joe Biden isn't president.
Okay,
fairly conclusively.
Matt, hang on for a second. I want to stay on this. Okay. What I was saying was it's not too late overall. I totally agree with your thing. But is it too? So you're saying it's not too late. If you were called upon today and others like you, although I think you're, if not the best, one of the top 2 or 3, it's not too late for you to jump in and support the arguments they would make 10 days from now, if so called. Because obviously, heretofore, they are focused on what I call the Lindsey Graham strategy, which is just to argue these esoteric parts of the Constitution, which are very important, due process, all that, and just get out of there in a couple of days, and he just takes his hits. But particularly in Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona, you're confident that you could step up and support a legal effort and show beyond a reasonable doubt that there was over the margin of error of the 20,000 in Wisconsin, I think the 12,300 in Georgia, and the 8,300 in Arizona. There's no doubt you could support that.
I believe we could make a very strong case for that. And remember, the problem with the Lindsey Graham strategy is it's completely asymmetrical. If you read the filing that the House Democrats made, it's full of everything they want to throw in there, every imagined crime that President Trump ever committed. So they're using this not as a true impeachment trial, but as a platform to basically badmouth him, badmouth his first term, and badmouth the people who supported him. They're using this as a tool to just promote their agenda. So I really don't see any problem with President Trump saying, look, if that's how they're going to conduct this impeachment, I'm going to go in with all guns blazing as well.
That your concept right there is absolutely brilliant. Right now, we're fighting asymmetric warfare. They're coming with an emotional piece, as Matt just said, ties every element of their argument together, right? And not a legal case, in an emotional case, to smear Trump in front of the eyes of the American people, particularly lower information voters. And what Braynard's saying is that, hey, we've got this evidence. If they're going to call it a big lie, let's just show it. And so, Matt, please, can you stay over to the next segment? Because I know we have other business to get to with you. But I just wanted to go, in your mind, if you were called upon, you got about 30 seconds to answer. If you were called upon today, you would be able to have the resources, et cetera, to provide support for a legal effort to broaden the argument and to fight a symmetric war with these people.
I'd be more than happy to provide everything I and my team have, and I think we could make an extremely convincing case.
We're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to return in a moment with Matt Braynard, who was the head data guy in the 2016 campaign, then came back to really do yeoman's work in the 77 days, as the New York Times calls it. Okay, President answers in 1 hour. The White House, Joe Biden is going to have a response on Burma. All next with Matt Braynard, War and Pandemic.